How's it going? Made up an air pruning wicking pot for our Paw Paw, or other people know it as Papaya, just behind us here. It's just a dwarf variety, so it's only supposed to grow to about 3 metres, so we're just going to leave him in that barrel and see how he goes as a bit of an experiment. I thought I'd bring you along and show you how I've made up the barrel. Pretty similar in design to the wicking barrels, if you want to check them out just up there, the way we make them with the reservoirs. The only difference between the wicking barrel and this is I have some holes cut in the side of the barrel and it's lined with some shade cloth. So the reason that is so the roots will be air pruned. This technique's used in the nursery trade pretty extensively, especially in tree propagation. The reason they use it is basically they can grow a large tree in a small pot. It can stay in the pot for a lot longer, which means they can grow them larger, get a better price. It's just an economic situation really. The way they actually work is the roots from the tree will grow out towards the holes in the sides of the pots. When the roots hit those holes, some of the pots are designed so the roots are specially trained towards the holes, the dry air from the outside kills off the root and the root basically terminates there. So what that does is send a message to the tree to send off some new roots closer to the stem or the trunk of the tree. These new roots are a lot better at taking up nutrients and water, and you don't get the root bound problems you have where the roots will circle the pot itself, which basically slows down the growth of the tree. So what this means for me is I can have this little dwarf Paw Paw here in a pot. The roots will grow out, hopefully hit those side panels, hit the dry air, die off, and we'll end up with a nice big massive healthy root system that is continually replacing itself, delivering loads of nutrients and water to the tree itself. So the barrel was pretty easy to knock up. I won't go into the dimensions and how the holes were measured out, mainly because all barrels and containers will probably be different, so we'll have a bit of a quick look at how it went together. So to begin with, all I did was run around the outside of the barrel with a 65mm hole saw. Also realised halfway through drilling all the holes in the barrel that it's easier clean-up wise to do it, drill from the inside towards the out. Most of the swarf gets collected down the bottom of the barrel. It's a lot easier to clean up afterwards. So after all the holes were drilled, I just ran around the outside with a utility knife and just cleaned up any sharp edges, and the same on the inside of the barrel. Now these 65mm or 2.5-inch holes are done, I'm going to come back and put an 1 3/4 or a 44mm hole in the centre of them. The idea behind that is if any roots do miss the holes here that are going to have a bit of cloth behind them, they're going to come down the centre and they're going to hit another hole. So I just figure it's pretty much the best way to do it, and it's really not going to affect the structural integrity of this too much at all, I don't think. Rather than spinning this big lump of metal around, drilling the pilot hole and then cutting the hole, I'm taking it a lot easier on the drill and drilling a bit of a pilot hole first, just with a smaller drill. Otherwise you're just going to burn your battery out. So I'll get to this one and let the fun begin. When it came to making up the reservoir, all I did was feed in some socked slotted ag line and just marked that out, chopped it off with a utility knife, and then just tied up the end of that sock with a bit of baling twine, just so it was sealed and no sand or grit or grime could get in there and clog up the reservoir. If you can't get the socked line, or you've only got the normal slotted ag pipe, it's as easy as covering that up with a bit of weed cloth or some shade cloth, something like that, and that just stops the reservoir from clogging up or sand falling through those little slots. After I'd cut the pipe, I'd realised I could have added a little bit extra in there and made it a little bit longer, but that's no stress. All I did was grab a small bit of scrap slotted ag pipe, and I wrapped that up in some weed mat and just tied it off, or weed cloth, sorry, and tied it off with some baling twine, and that gives me probably about another 2.5 litres of water holding capacity in that reservoir. Next, the fill tube had to be added into the reservoir pipe. I just used an offcut of the irrigation pipe that we used to make the hoop house, bevel cut on the end so water can escape nicely into the reservoir area. All I did was cut a trapdoor in the reservoir pipe, popped out the little trapdoor, pushed in the fill pipe, and then secured it using the sock from the outside of the irrigation line. I just drew that around it. Kira held it in place and I just zipped on a zip tie. That just holds it nicely in place so no sand or soil can go down there and fill up the reservoir. So the next bit that needed to be done was adding the material on the inside of the barrel. I decided against using the polypropylene bags, the shopping bag material, mainly because it doesn't have a very long lifespan. I went with the 90% shade cloth. It's UV stabilised, it's got a 10-year warranty on it, so it could probably outlast the tree itself. So I ended up doubling over the shade cloth, mainly so it will help retain a bit more moisture in there, but the holes are still open enough that the roots will air prune themselves. So for attaching the shade cloth, all I did was zip some 1/8 holes all the way around the top and then just started wiring in the shade cloth starting at one end. It just made it sit nicely against the outside of the barrel. After the shade cloth was put on, it was time to wire in the fill pipe into the reservoir itself. All I did for that was drill a hole on the side of the pipe closest to the outside of the barrel, just so when the zip tie or the wire goes through to wire it on, I can still put my my hose attachment into the pipe itself. And yeah, it was just tightened up. All that does is stop people from coming along, grabbing hold of the pipe, going what's this, and pulling it out and stuffing up your reservoir. So once the barrel was built with the reservoir, the fill pipe and the shade cloth put in place, all it was a matter of doing was putting it in situ beside this stairs here. This is where the barrel's being set up. It's actually at just to one side of our back stairs, and we'll be able to stand on the landing and pick the pawpaws. It's a dwarf variety. It's only supposed to grow to 3.5 metres from memory, so there was a barrel here previously, so it's all nice and flat and level already. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't have to worry about positioning outlet or overflow holes, mainly because the water's just going to come out the bottom of those holes down there. So all I've got to do now is just put a bit of this sand down the bottom there, take the pawpaw out, pop him in there and just fill in around the sides with some compost and soil mix I'm going to make up. So I'll get this all set up and we'll get cracking. I added enough sand in the reservoir area to cover the slotted ag pipe and also to just come above the bottom edge of the holes drilled in the barrel by about 30mm or about 1.25 inches. Just adding some sugarcane mulch on top of the sand there, and what that does is it stops the soil washing down into the sand layer while it's just settling. After that, yeah, the sugarcane mulch will just be eaten by the worms and used as food. On top of that, I'm adding in a soil mix. It's got some horse manure, a very small amount of mushroom compost, and just some soil from other beds and bits and pieces we've pulled apart. This is the dwarf red pawpaw that's going into the pot. As you can see, it's got a fair bit of height. It's about just over a metre, just over 1,000mm, 3 foot. So it's going to be fun trying to get that in there. Well, that was a lot easier than I thought. Just on there you can see, I'll just zoom in a bit, you can see the little wet pot there. That's what's been watering it all this time. I'm fairly content in just leaving that in there. I think that'll be alright. So it's sitting rather proud up there at the moment. We might just see if we can dig him down just a little bit. There we go. He'll probably fall a little bit lower. He's not actually root bound yet. He's only been in here as a seedling. We got him probably about 8 months ago, I think. So he's put on a lot of growth, but it doesn't appear that he's root bound, so I'm pleased with that. Hopefully once the roots hit the outside here, they'll start pruning off and doing the right thing. So it's all a bit of an experiment, I suppose, at this point. So what I'm going to be filling the sides of this barrel in with is a whole heap of worm castings full of worms from one of our worm farm barrels under the lime tree. And down the bottom here is just some compost. That's pretty much all what's going to be going around the side of this tree. We'll probably end up with the odd pigeon pea germinating in here, but that's not too much of an issue. So I'll just mix this through and then add it in. No, I forgot to add before, I've added some organic CBM fertiliser and also about 2 litres of biochar into the soil mix as well. So there we go. The tree's in, looking very happy. She's all mulched and it's getting filled at the moment. So it's going to be very easy to tell when this is full, because what we'll get is down the bottom here, we'll get water coming out the side of the barrel itself. So when the pawpaw or papaya was first potted out, it had one of these guys put in it. It's a slip cast irrigation device called a wet pot. That's buried down in the root zone, and the roots of the plants will envelop it and basically just feed just from this. Very water wise, very good if you're on limited water. but I've actually left it in there. I just put this one on so the water wouldn't run to waste while I was moving the plant around, and that'll just be some extra irrigation. The plant's already used to it, the roots will be around it in there, so that way we have a bit of a I suppose it's a hybrid. It's not only a wicking barrel, it's an air pruning pot as well as having a wet pot in there. So Paw Paw's been in the barrel for about a week now, and she looks like she's travelling along really nicely. I had a mate around the other day, Dave, cheers Dave, and he showed me the difference between the male and the female parts of the flowers on these bisexual Paw Paws, so that was really interesting, something I really needed to know. Hopefully, with the amount of flowers on there, we'll end up with some Paw Paw on the plate by the end of summer, so fingers crossed on that one. As for the air pruning side of things with this barrel, I think we're pretty much along the right track. It's a perennial plant, so I haven't seen too many perennial plants done in air pruning situations. A lot of veggies on the clips on YouTube, and a couple of hydroponic people who grow using smart pots using the air pruning technique, so it'll be interesting to see how this Paw Paw goes, I think. From what the guys in the industry tell me, it should do fine, even though they did recommend their pots. So we'll wait and see. I'll grab one of them and see how it goes. As for these smart pots, cheers again Dale, thank you very much sir. Haven't got around to setting them up, but I will be setting up a garden now the girls are coming up to their school holidays. I have seen the other air pruning wicking gardens in the little kiddie pools around YouTube and a few other places on different websites and forums, so something really not suited for our backyard, and I'm also really happy with the way our existing wicking beds and wicking barrels are going at the moment, so I'm not about to run out and change over to air pruning bags and setups all through the backyard. So this is a bit of an experiment, and the other little air pruning garden as well. So we'll just see how they go for now, and hopefully there might be also an air pruning element added to the aquaponics in the near future. We'll just wait and see what happens with that layout. So I pretty much will leave it there and stop banging on. If you've got any comments, questions or suggestions, pop them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. Other than that, hope you have a great one and take it easy. Catch ya. Lots of planes today. And feet.